My name's David Smith from Golf Projects International, sitting here today on the balcony at Wilshire Country Club with golf course architect Carl Phillips, project engineer from M6, Bob Woodward, and from Pinnacle Design, our landscape architect, Ken Alperstein. Carl, what does this mean to you, this project, and what can we expect in your restoration?
Well, I'm hopeful that we will not only realize the full vision of Norman Macbeth. As you know, I mean, this was the pinnacle of his design work here at Wilshire and a real gem of a piece of architecture, but to really bring ourselves to a position that the Barranca is restored at a level that we not just celebrate the pictures on the wall, but we actually celebrate when we look out the back of the clubhouse at the Barranca that's now been recreated and restored.
So it's going to be great that we have new greens, design features, Barranca, but really the essence of this project all starts with golf course infrastructure.
Absolutely. I mean, we've talked a lot through this project about the need to deal with the water that runs through this mile of Barranca and how that really is the heart of the golf course and how everything radiates out from the Barranca. And so to be able to pull all of that infrastructure together at one time, make it all new, make it all fresh, make it all workable. I mean, we're really taking care of years of deferred maintenance in one fell swoop.
And in the evaluation of the project, when you look at other parts of the infrastructure, bunkers, tees, greens, and of course irrigation, how do you respond to the question of when does it need to be replaced and does it need to be replaced?
Well, I mean, we're really dealing with a lot of really original components here. I mean, I don't know of another golf course of this era that hasn't done more agronomic improvements, particularly greens and tees and so forth. So that's been good news for us, in that the original Macbeth architecture is still there and still been preserved. Now we have a time, we're at a point in time where we can really restore that architecture, but also with all the modern infrastructure under the ground. Even though we don't see it, even though it costs real money, even though it's a very technical part of it, it allows us to bring the conditioning standard now to the highest level.
So can you do all of these aesthetic upgrades without addressing the infrastructure first?
No, not really. I mean, it all starts from what's under the ground, right? I mean, it's a constant battle of adding water and subtracting water to get the best kind of conditions year-round. And certainly we've got a great year-round condition to play golf, so let's have conditions that will give us the best conditions year-round.
And there's been quite a lot of discussion about the tradition of Poania at Wilshire Country Club in the greens, and of course the recommendation to go to bent grass. Is that a recommendation you support strongly?
Absolutely. I mean, if this was my golf course, to me, it really wouldn't be much of a discussion at all. I mean, there's places like Pebble Beach that have successfully, in a very foggy kind of damp climate, been successful with Poana. But I mean, we're farther inland than a lot of courses closer to the coast here in Southern California that are been very successful with creeping bent grass. And so at Wilshire Country Club, with our little bit warmer climates, year-round playing conditions the way they are, I think there's just absolutely by far the best choice for this club.
So in everything we do in life, we need a team, and we've got a great team assembled at Wilshire.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about the importance and the role of the landscape architect, and then perhaps we might ask Ken Alperstein to give us some thoughts on his philosophy.
Well, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of folks that do landscape architecture, and you can say what makes them special. What makes them special is the quality of the work they've done in this region, but really in so many of the golf courses around here. So they know better than anyone the plants that work, the scale that's necessary for a successful end result. A lot of times the scale gets off because people get a bit onesie-twosies, or they try to have too many rose bushes and flowers on a golf course. But here the idea is that when we look out the back of the clubhouse, we have this big, wonderful, simple palette, but grand scale kind of look and feel that feels wonderfully Wilshire, but also has a wonderful, nice, soft edges to it. And I think we have by far my A team, I would call them, for Wilshire Country Club here today with us. So I don't know if Ken can live up to all that praise, but it's all well felt.
So Ken, Carl used the word there, simple. What's your philosophy as you look to the landscape? And you look to this project, you have 20 acres of native area. It's a lot of area on a golf course. It's a fifth of the total property, basically. What's your philosophy?
I think simple elegance. I think coming up with a palette of design that makes the course extraordinarily playable, drought tolerant to keep up with the ever demanding water requirements and drought conditions that are happening in Southern California, and creating an aesthetically pleasing environment that frames the center of the golf course, opens up the long range views in the center, but takes away and screens the negative views that we have on the perimeters of the golf course.
Water conservation is one of the cornerstones of your thoughts and your philosophy?
Absolutely. So on the perimeters, everything that we do, or we put in, the sort of green shrubby plants that are going to sort of help soften negative visual things that we don't want you to see, will all be drip irrigated. The buffalo grass in the center of the golf course and the non-playable zones will be all very water drought tolerant, which will really help the overall water demands on the golf course.
And looking at the plan that you've worked out with Kyle is really from the tee, there's continuous turf grass to the fairway to the green. So the concept that we've had at Wilshire in the past, which is areas of native and sand between the tee and the green, or tee and the fairway, is no longer.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a wonderful improvement that we're going to hopefully eliminate almost all of the dust that the members have been complaining about as they've had to drive through some of these waste areas to get from tees to fairways. So I think the continuous turf is going to give back the Macbeth feel of the original golf course, but yet we'll still have enough landscaping to provide interest. But the landscaping will be more subtly on the perimeters of the golf holes rather than where you have to play over and across them.
So currently there's really no landscape plan or philosophy in the existing barranca. It's a mish and mash of fences and armament and erosion, and really there's no real formal approach. What are your thoughts, and how do you envision the banks of the barranca? How will they be maintained? What will they be maintained with? And will they be playable?
Yeah, I think the beauty of the barranca is the width of the barranca that we're going to create, the low flow channels down the center of them that will be interesting. But most of all, we've got a large areas of the Bermuda grass that will make it quite playable. So that if you hit an errant ball shot, as long as it's not in what we'd call the very low flow channel of the stream, you will be able to advance the ball and play it and advance the ball forward. We may have a few areas by tees that may have some aesthetic planting in them just to accent the barrancas, but for the most part, I'd say 85 to 90% of the barrancas are going to be extraordinarily playable and make it more enjoyable for the golfers.
And you and your team at Pinnacle have collaborated with Kyle and his team on the bridges, the design of the bridges, and really the aesthetic look of the bridges. Talk to us a little bit about what went through your mind in that process.
I think the most important thing about the bridges is we really tried to look at the 16 and 18 bridge as being one of the takeoff of the iconic bridges that were here at the, when the course was first built. I think we've simplified them, but still left the historical feel of what they were. The other 11 bridges on the golf course, our feeling and our dressing is to be something that they all match, but very simple, understated, and elegant, but not over the top ornamental.
So Bob Woodward at M6, I mean, when you look at this, it's 1 mile of barranca. You've got a road crossing, if you will. Clearly the club's had a lot of real challenges with flooding and damage from past storms. Is this an impossible challenge, or can this with engineering be really addressed in a responsible professional way?
This can easily be addressed. The grading and the drainage is pretty straightforward. What's really created the issue here is you get clear water from the neighborhoods to the north, and clear water in engineering terms equates to hungry water. And hungry water tends to scour away the kind of material you have in your barranca. And what it does is it takes all that material, drops it down in front of the inlets that go under Beverly, and they clog it up. So that creates some of the flooding issues that y'all are seeing. So we're hopeful that this notion of a combination of gabions, engineering this barranca so it's going to flow better, will address all those sedimentation issues and flooding issues that we're seeing.
So most of the members don't go out on Sunday morning to Home Depot and buy gabions. And I know that you in the engineering world use them frequently. Help us understand a little bit more. What is a gabion? How do you construct them, and how do you install them into the club here at Wilshire?
So a gabion is basically a rock-filled basket. You take a basket 3 by 3 by 6 feet long, and you fill it with cobblestone, about 4 to 6 inches in diameter. The nice thing about gabions is you can treat them like you would a retaining wall, but without all the ugly concrete. You can also train vegetation over them and sometimes even plug plant them so that you can naturalize them. The presentation is more of a natural rock feature as opposed to a structure with much reduced costs as well.
So, Carl, you've had to, of course, not only work very hard with Ken's team at Pinnacle, but also with M6's team, because you've got a vision artistically of how you'd like the barranca to look. Bob's got an engineering responsibility to handle this water flow. Can you explain a little bit about how that's gone backwards and forwards between your teams?
Yeah, well, I mean, Bob, you've given us really the engineering parameters, right, for the widths and depths and kind of how you see this working in an engineering standpoint, and then I guess we're just trying to make it look pretty, right? Is that kind of how it all goes from there?
It's all about taking the shape and making it pretty.
See, this is where Ken and I have our kindred spirits. We're used to working with engineers who are all about making it work, and then we're always trying to make it look pretty.
So as I go down the line and can finish, Ken, why don't you just summarize what a finished project is going to look like, what a finished project's going to play like, and what you think the members of Wilshire Country Club in September 2025, they come out here and they see the landscape approach that you've provided?
I think the beauty of what we're going to provide is we're really opening up the long range views between golf holes. We're simplifying the interior to make it feel more open, concentrate your views more towards the center, and then screening and softening the perimeters of the golf course. And so we're going to have these shades of dark green shrubs on the perimeters, screening views that we don't want you to see, and then the interiors having this subtle grading of buffalo grass and landscape zones that will then eat up the 20 acres of turf reduction zones that we need to complement the golf.
And for the members here, what is buffalo grass?
Buffalo grass is a subtle, drought-tolerant grass that looks very similar to the Bermuda grass, but probably takes half the amount of water. It's considered a native grass in California and will give a little bit of a textural change to the playable Bermuda grass. And I think that's what we're looking for, is some type of contrast between the playable grass and these landscape zones that we need to incorporate into the project for water savings, and also, adds to the appeal of the environment by not having a wall-to-wall grass golf course.
And there's a plan to demolish and take away almost 100 trees, perhaps transplant and replant and newly plant about 140 trees.
Correct. And I think a lot of what the trees that we're taking out, we've really studied with the team, the superintendents on site, of what are the trees that are a problem, what are the ones that drop a ton of leaves, what are the ones that look non-native to the site, and try to eliminate those trees in the center of the golf course. Really get back into clusters of trees rather than long fairways of continuous trees. So we're looking for clusters and open space. But then on the perimeters where we have negative views, we'll use trees to either soften the condominiums, whether it's softening the adjacent streets, or where comfortably between residences and golf holes, slightly softening the views of the homes without obliterating their views out toward the golf course.
Finally, from a landscaping standpoint, there's been some discussion about color, about pinks and yellows and violets and things. The philosophy on color in these native areas?
The philosophy on the color is much more subtle types of greens, different colors of greens, much more subtle, elegant green colors that will just sort of soften. Maybe every once in a while they'll go through a natural bloom cycle, but really what we're looking for is different shades of green to soften the views and concentrate your main view on the golf course itself.
And well, thank you for that, Ken, and we're excited to work with you on the project coming forward. And Bob, we talked about going to Home Depot to buy gabions, but same thing, it's not often you hear on television about the 10-year event. So from an engineering standpoint, you're designing you're engineering the barranca for a 10-year event. Could you explain to the members what exactly that means?
So engineers need to have a way of classifying storms in a way that's more than just that was a big storm or that was a huge storm. So a 10-year storm is the kind of rainstorm you get once every 10 years. To the average person, they would look at a 10-year storm and say, that was the biggest storm I've seen in recent memory, if you had to put it into a box. This golf course is mapped by FEMA for a 100-year flood, which will occur, of course, once every 100 years. Even that expanse takes up a good part of the golf course, so we don't want to design for a 100-year storm. We want to design for a 10-year, knowing the golf course will still convey a 100-year storm.
So in the event someone said, well, why don't you just build it for a 25-year event instead of a 10-year event? Obviously, that would be wider. Are there reasons why that wasn't possible?
When we look at going to a 25-year storm, you take whatever we're going to design for our Barranca and you make it twice as wide. As you start to go twice as wide, you really encroach on some of the play areas without really improving the performance of the drainage or the flood control facility. So we prefer to design for something you can expect in a big storm in recent memory and then leave the rest to golf.
So Bob, in closing, as we close the chapter on engineering, I know there's obviously the club's had a lot of challenges and problems with debris and trash coming from the north of us. And you've got a plan to address that.
We do. One of the realities to being a golf course located in an urban area is you get all this drainage that comes on from the adjacent urban areas. It washes all kinds of trash and debris and other flotsam and jetsam onto the golf course, much of it undesirable. So the theory is to filter out the trash, allow the water that we want to come onto the golf course, and keep all of the undesirable material in these filtration facilities.
Carl, as we close today, you were here 15 years ago, 2008, and you did a project. What's going to be different about Project 2024 as opposed to Project 2008?
Well, certainly now this is really the first opportunity we've had to really look at the entire course and the entire project. I mean, the elephant in the room has always been the Barranca. I mean, in 2008, we had a couple of things going on. Was how to solve the Barranca was a huge question, but also, if you remember, we were in a financial crisis. And so there were some people wondering, well, what are you doing even taking on this project? And so even though it was really limited in terms of the areas we could work but we did, make some real steps to bring back the essence of Macbeth, at least to a level that the members started to really understand how much there was really within that original design, and not just in terms of the bunkering, but also in terms of the openness in the center of the golf course. Of course, the new irrigation was put in, but we also over time had the opportunity to go back and restore the double greens that Macbeth had on the par threes. Now with this Barranca, which we've talked about a few times, about just the way everything hinges off of it being the heart of the whole course, is to address that through M6 engineering to finally, and through this Gabion solution, is to really address that, to bring back the grandeur of the scale. And so in the future, when we're done with this, we won't just be looking at the pictures of what the course was 100 years ago, but looking at what the course is today in its present beauty and celebrating that on the walls of the clubhouse.
You've had I think it's fair to say, a long and impressive career, and you've certainly executed some projects known around the world. Of course, Kings Barnes, the great work at the Cal Club up in Northern California, Valderrama, of course, you work at, and really you've had an extraordinary career, and you've also had an extraordinary relationship with Wilshire for a long, long time. People come to Wilshire, people come to Los Angeles. You come to Los Angeles and you've got Bel Air and Los Angeles and Hillcrest and Brentwood. They've all renovated. Riviera's always renovating. Lakeside's renovated. What do you think, what can the members expect with a completed project, how the golf world, the golf community that come to Wilshire and see a completely restored Macbeth golf course, what can they expect, and what do you think the takeaway will be?
Well, I mean, in one sense, I'm amazed really how people actually see just the little bits we've done, really just scratching the surface, and the reaction to that. I know a lot of members, new members, have said was really kind of the reason why they joined, was they really loved the way the course had been changed and presented in that way. We now have an LPGA event here. And so there's a lot of celebration of just the bits we have. And I think when we see it in its full completion, its grandeur, and also what we're attacking here is really creating an agronomic foundation to even just upgrade the way the entire golf course is presented. And from a maintenance standpoint, I think the elegance and the simplicity of this beautiful design and all the architecture that Macbeth left us to be able to put that all together will just be magnificent.